So we're back for part 2 of Owning Esports with Steve Arhancet, who during the break I just found out I've been mispronouncing his name the entire time. I'm sorry about that.
That's okay.
We've fixed that for part 2, thank God. Let's talk a little bit about League of Legends, which again is where you were. This whole thing was born for you, I think.
Absolutely.
So 4th place. we're projecting
1 + 1 + 2.
Yeah, we're recording this right above or right ahead of week 9 of the LCS, so we'll see how playoffs go. But
yeah.
So obviously, Team Liquid experienced a bit of a reset in the League of Legends space this year. I feel like with the sort of the introduction of these rookies that you brought up from TLA, how do you feel about sort of the path that you guys have followed over the course of this split?
So this split has been really interesting. I'll say this season.
Sure.
I'll start off there. So in the off season, it was the first time that you saw major investment come into the League of Legends esports space. You had Rick Fox, you had Andy Miller.
I mean, Shaq eventually showed up with NRG, yeah.
And so there was big dollars coming in to support the ecosystem. And let's just put yourself in the shoes of an investor that doesn't really maybe know as much about esports. What competitive advantage are you going to have in off season to recruit players? Money.
A lot of money.
A lot of money.
Yes.
So little old me, I have bootstrapped this organization. We've been running off a cash flow. I mean, just waiting for sponsor payments to come in to support what we're doing in the ecosystem. And we've never taken a loan. We've never done any kind of round of financing. And so it was difficult, right? You're in an off season, people going after the best talent, and my budget is limited in comparison. So what do? Well, I thought I've got to go the rookie route. I've got to go to my bread and butter. I have managed Team LoL Pro, Curse Academy, Team Curse EU, Team Curse Australia, Team Liquid Academy. Over that course, probably maybe 95 players at certain times.
Sure.
So I've got to identify up-and-coming talent that's really hungry, and the player salaries won't match what these like big name, more notable players will go for. So that's what I did, and put together a team of rookies. We went from the, I think, oldest team in North American LCS to the youngest team in LCS.
Yeah.
And just, I spent a lot of time with coaching staff and, making sure that I was deeply involved in the development of those players. And a lot of people, when we announced our roster, I think the standings from like ESPN and LCS put us at like 9th and 8th. Like, what is Steve doing?
Yeah.
Like, what are they
but
doing?
I feel like that's a common theme. Everybody predicts Team Liquid to just suck in the beginning, and then you guys start getting better, right?
Yeah, it's so people don't believe in people they don't know, right? It's just a bunch of unknowns, and year after year, we've managed to place third or fourth. More often
mostly fourth, yes.
Mostly fourth. But this season I think we have a really good shot of going to Worlds. Our team is capable of beating TSM and absolutely beating. We have a winning record against C9. If we were to go against CLG, I think we would pull out the win in playoffs.
Well, Mortals is the other favorite for Worlds.
Mortals is tough. They seem to just counter us naturally.
Yeah, I've heard that there's a bit of a rock, paper, scissors situation going around with some of the top teams, at least from scrims, where some people can beat TSM, some people can't, some people can beat Immortals, some people can't.
Yeah, that's absolutely the case. So I think we'll do okay. We'll see.
Yeah.
This could be the year we go to Worlds.
Okay. I mean, at the very least, you get close, like every year, right? Yeah. Do you get a lot of crap for that from the other team owners for always being right on the edge?
Absolutely. I mean, Andy constantly gives me I think I get the 4th joke once a week in some format. But, I've got to pat myself on the back a little bit. We managed to do something really great with a lot less resources, and so I'm proud of the organization for accomplishing that. Yeah.
Sure. So for the team, you also have Team Liquid Academy,
Mm-hmm.
And they recently just lost, but still in the running potentially to make it into LCS. This would be the second time that you've managed to do this. What? Okay, well, let's have a very frank conversation about what's going on with these challenger teams.
Yeah.
It is kind of a crazy and perhaps scary world where like Rick Fox is getting kicked out of the LCS by like Jack's second team or your second team. Do you think that's a good system? And do you think that, and sort of, do you think that that needs to be changed? What are your sort of opinions on this sort of challenger farm system that I see a lot of the owners chasing?
Oh, that's a really good question. I think a lot of the folks at Riot probably ask themselves that question.
Right.
And I think the answer is that the current system is not optimal. It needs to go to whatever version it's on, like version 6, because it doesn't work. Someone like, let's say Rick Fox, for example, he has invested into this team financially. He's invested his time. He's put his brand. He is super active in the management of the players. He's provided resources. He's done salaries. He has done everything that you would expect from a legitimate owner that is, personally involved in their investment.
Now you and Jack are going to kick him out. This poor guy.
I mean, see, that's what's flawed, right? Because someone like Rick, who has invested so much, should continue to operate a League of Legends team. It's healthy for the ecosystem for him to continue to develop talent. In some ways, it's flawed. In other ways, the system has also eliminated other, owners that I personally feel should not be involved in the LCS to have a spot in the LCS. So it's had pros and cons. I think we're at a stage now, though, where the ownership group that currently owns teams in North America it's a good group of owners, and it didn't always used to be that way.
Sure.
You think back to like the Marn days, right?
Yeah.
Like
I saw Marn. He said that if he was still in the LCS, they'd be number 1 right now. I saw him at Evo just recently. So you don't believe? You don't believe that?
That would not be the case.
Okay, that would not be the case. Okay, fair enough. So yeah, I mean, to your point, the ownership system has matured, and so maybe it's time to figure out a way to sort of protect people's investments. For you, though, whenever you sort of develop these the secondary teams, the challenger teams, do you see that more of a, hey, everybody always talks about $1 million as supposedly the sort of ballpark price for a LCS team. Do you see that as a sort of way for you just to grab more money? Do you think it's a way for you to sort of have an insurance policy if the Team Liquid main team ever goes away? Is it to develop talent for the Team Liquid main team? I mean, what are the main draws for you in sort of creating this challenger system?
So I know that folks will probably think, oh, it's just all about the money. But I would argue that I was developing challenger teams well before any other North American team was developing younger talent, and I wasn't doing it because of potential of having to sell a spot. Riot didn't even have policies against double ownership in LCS at the time that I was cultivating a challenger team or challenger teams. There's one main reason why I believe it's really important is because of the spirit of competition. You need to have athletes be really hungry, and when there's no pressure from a guy sitting on the bench looking at your position and maybe training harder than you, it's hard to give it everything,
right.
Especially in like esports where things get really burnt out and you just are, you're working 6-7 days a week and you're putting X number of hours per day and you're immobile, you're sitting in front of a computer. It's really taxing. So, number one reason to win and to do really well, and just identify new and upcoming talent for future rosters.
So sort of talking about your Team Liquid Academy team and the Team Liquid main team, maybe you can tell me what is actually going on with Piglet. Mm-hmm. This is the biggest sort of question mark. Everybody kind of says like, oh, it's a better fit here or something. Mm-hmm. I mean, what is this world champion up to, and sort of what's his future with Team Liquid?
Piglet has been amazing. He has certain personality traits that just do better with a group of players than another group of players. The number one reason why Piglet is playing on Challenger is because he prefers to play with that team.
Okay.
That is the sole reason. And when he's playing with Team Liquid Academy, he's performing at a 90% optimization versus when he was playing for the main LCS team, he was kind of giving like 40-45%. And in a strategy game, especially in esports, mindset is so important. You know, you've got to be like mentally engaged and have focus, and when that's not happening, and we were trying so many different things, but it just wasn't working. So, you know, now that he's playing on TLA, I mean, I wish I could just like show you the comms from the games and have you see the team interact and how, you know, they're learning more on a day-to-day basis. But Piglet is exhibiting a lot of signs of leadership. He's feeling really comfortable and in his element, and so why not, right? And so that was the rationale behind doing that move.
I mean, so let's say the team doesn't qualify for LCS. How long will the world champion be satisfied hanging out in North American challenger scene? Mm-hmm. Do you think that he'll stick around, or I mean, do you have a projection for what his path is with Team Liquid?
I think his path with Team Liquid is undefined. I think it will be determined by what happens in the next like 3 weeks.
Sure.
And at that point, we'll be able to figure out, you know, where that sits. I mean, I would love to continue working with Piglet, and we'll just have to see how things shape up.
Now, with the challenger team, if it does make it in, I mean, there's always a lot of conversations around what happens to the players, you know, after a sell or a team sell, which you would have to do, or you could sell the Team Liquid main team, I guess, but you have to sell one of them, right? And I know you've already sort of told everyone that you're very player focused. How have you approached? Are there any protections in place for the players on the other side of a team sell, or do they? I've heard rumors that certain players on certain challenger teams get a cut if a team makes it in and they're sold and they don't make it to the other side of it. I mean, what are you doing to help the players succeed on the other side of making it into the LCS if they can no longer be part of the Team Liquid organization?
Mm-hmm. So Team Liquid as an org, absolutely player focused. I feel like I've done as good of a job as I can to build in aspects of their contract to protect the players. For example, there's definitely a share of the sales price for the players that qualify in. We also have certain things in their contract where, you know, they will play, like they're not going to get gutted out right after they, you know, spent all this time trying to qualify.
Sure.
To just be kicked and replaced with somebody else. I just don't think that's right. And so there's protections in their contract for that. And and I feel like we've built a really good and fair compensation model on both sides, you know, to them, and then their obligations and requirements to the org.
Sure.
Yeah.
So let's sort of step away from just Challenger. Let's talk about sort of the more broad League of Legends system right now. First off, your take on sort of the switch to best of threes. Do you think that this is a good thing, even setting aside the viewership stuff, which we'll talk about in a second, but do you like this sort of new best of 3-day-a-week system that we've entered into from a format stance, given, you know, now that we're done with the split?
So there's two answers to that question, depending on how you ask. One is how I prefer from a competitive standpoint, and then how do I feel from a spectator standpoint. Yeah. So from a competitive standpoint, I love the best of threes. I think they're great. I think it's more dynamic. You know, the better team should win, unless it's like our CLG games.
Yeah, I mean, that happens. AK gold leads, you know, sometimes they don't mean much.
Gold leads, right? Or our TLA game against C9C where the Ramus thing happened.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes your finger slips and pick and ban. I mean, these
actually,
things
that's not what happened, by the way.
Oh, really?
No.
What happened? Sorry we can
to digress.
Come back to it.
Yeah. So if you remember from the games, Piglet had a headset issue.
Okay.
During the broadcast, and when they were fixing the headset issue, Piglet was asked to change the keyboard settings from Korean to English, and so that was changed. And then he hadn't typed since the keyboard change, and so then when the coach asked him to type in Soraka, he went to go type, and it was in the wrong language, and he was panicking because a few seconds.
Yeah.
So it was unfortunate. I think I don't blame Riot at all for that. I think it's just matter of circumstance. He should have just put the keyboard settings back in place, but unfortunate event.
Yeah. All right. So looping back into best of threes. So you like best of threes because it normally means that the best team wins from a competitive standpoint.
Yes, and so from a viewership standpoint, I think that it's a lot of content, and it feels like almost too much content. There's no way that I would watch all of the games. I mean, the multi-broadcast of two different games, it's just too much.
No one would, right? But the idea is you pick your favorite teams, I think.
Right, you pick your favorite teams and you just watch those. I get that. I think we're going to find out how playoffs and the events that they have planned for after playoffs. I think we'll see how that goes. But I think viewership has taken a hit. I think. Yeah. I'm not sure.
I mean, it certainly feels like it, right? If you look at if you add the numbers together on Twitch and YouTube or whatever, it feels like total viewership and certain points of time throughout the day are much lower than they previously used to be. So we can sort of transition to that. Is that something that you are concerned about? Because obviously League is, I think even with CSGO being so big, sort of the staple for so many organizations, including yours, I would say.
Yeah. I haven't run the numbers. I'm not sure if what you're saying about adding all the totals, if that's an accurate, I'm not sure. But, to me, it feels like the viewership is still there. And I don't think that it's declining, but I have to do an analysis and try to figure that out.
Right. And ultimately, Twitch and Riot and the other broadcast partners are the only people that can tell us how many unique viewers are there. But
yeah, exactly.
I mean, let's say a theoretical world where it is declining, or they look at it and they're like, oh yeah, we've got even 10% less unique viewers. Do you think then that that's something Riot should be worried about? Because I don't know how much that affects the bottom line for teams like yours, where obviously you're selling sponsorships around these players and sort of the teams and the brands that you're building around them. So what effect does that have for you guys, and is that a concern for you?
For us, it's not as much of a concern because we're one of the larger brands that competes, and so if you go with that assumption that people are choosing the games they watch, well, they're more apt to watch the TL games than they are the
Phoenix One games.
Phoenix One games, exactly, unless it's against TSM.
Right, yes.
And it's an upset.
And everybody tunes in, yes.
Yes, exactly. So it's it doesn't hurt us as much as it would hurt the less notable teams.
Right. Yeah. So one of the other conversations that's been kind of continuing to brew is just over years now is sort of the state of the League of Legends ecosystem and the format with 2 splits of LCS, playoffs, World Championships, All-Star event, and then sometimes some IEMs or something. How content are you with sort of the way that's structured? Because I think there are maybe more than, especially with the change to best of threes, more than there have been in the past, people calling for a change in the system. You look at CSGO, it's got these majors which are blowing up, all these different events that are happening there. Do you feel like Riot would benefit, or that League would benefit from tweaking the system a little bit and allowing for more international competition, or different take on the format and structure of these tournaments and events?
I think I think they should probably take a look at having the team travel a little bit more than what they're traveling right now. To only have a handful of international events probably does hurt viewership and engagement across the board. I think through the regular season, they should probably do some of those matches at various cities, and maybe that travel in North America is limited. It's not international tournaments, but just more locations for regular season games, I think could be pretty cool. So I think it needs to go through a new version, and with all content, you've got to stay fresh and relevant, and you gotta keep it new and different and have some sort of appeal to it. So I think the current format has become a little stale, and that's why those opinions are being circulated.
Do you think, this is a kind of big question, but do you think League Esports has peaked or plateaued at least? Do you think it's going to keep going up, or do you think we've kind of hit where League is going to be at least for some time?
Mm-hmm. If I had to say my gut, I'd say that it would be determined by some international growth and what those regions are going to look like and where it's picking up additional viewership. I know South America is like a big market. They just opened up a few different Riot Games has opened up a few different studios in South America. That's got to be in response to increased viewership in those regions. And so that's going to help the overall total world numbers. So I think we'll see. Yeah. But I it's doing great. It's doing fine.
And then, we talked about earlier when we were talking about CSGO, your desire to sort of see broadcast revenue shares and something along those lines. Obviously, that's CSGO. In League, there's been so many people who have been calling for a franchise model or for, something along those lines. Maybe, as we were talking earlier about like a change to Challenger and a change to LCS, do you think a new system which allowed you guys to sort of be part of a franchise system for the league, do you think that's something that you would be interested in? Is that something that you think the league needs?
I think that the teams should have some sort of, teams and players should have some sort of mechanism for and protections for competing in the league and having a share of those profits and those revenues that are being generated on the league level. So absolutely, I think it would be great for teams and players, I think that we're at a point now with the ownership group in LCS that hopefully it gets to that point quickly.
Well, thanks so much for talking about League. We're going to talk so much more about other esports things, Overwatch coming up, and so many other things happening in the industry in part 3 of Owning Esports coming up just next.